Welcome to the Viking Age podcast. It's the official podcast of the VikingAge.com. My name is Chris Schad. I write for the Viking Age as well as bring you the news, zone coverage, and the Brookings Register. We do this every Monday and Thursday right here on the Viking Age YouTube channel. We are also on Apple and Spotify the very next day. So however you consume us, don't forget to rate, comment, share, and subscribe so you never miss a new episode and we can send the word to the masses. Adam Patrick is out tonight, as you can see, as he is flying home from the Dominican Republic. So in his place is my guy, Mr. Nick Marty. What's going on, Nick?
Chris, it's good. I'm glad I could fill in kind of last minute on this and provide the infinite Viking wisdom that I think I have anyway. So I appreciate the call. Always excited to talk a little purple with you.
And we will be doing so kind of with some eyes behind in the back of our head, because I kind of forgot the Chiefs were playing tonight. And I don't know if you've heard this. Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce, they're brothers, right?
So I've heard that.
Yeah, they have this podcast, and their mom goes to every game, and she wears like a half and half jersey to support both of them. And one of them is dating, I don't know, it's some super famous singer or whatever. So I mean, there are a lot of people watching this game. So I'm a little paranoid because when I logged on here, I'm just going to give full disclosure for anybody who tunes in. Full disclosure, if you tune in, there is actually a live stream scheduled for the Chiefs halftime game. So we might have to like boot halfway through this thing. So we're going to live dangerously and we're just going to rock through this thing. Lickety split. And why don't we just get the bad parts out of the way? Because the Vikings, their winning streak came to an end last night at the hands of the Denver Broncos. The Broncos defeat the Vikings 21-20 on Sunday Night Football. The Vikings led 10-9 at halftime and then 17-9 in the third quarter. But Russell Wilson led a 2-minute drive and threw a touchdown pass to Courtland Sutton with a minute left to win the game. The Vikings had their 5-game winning streak snapped, as I mentioned, but they're still 6-5 and in the final playoff spot in the NFC. Let's just start here, Nick. What was your biggest takeaway from Sunday's game?
Well, I think there's a few things, but the biggest takeaway I had is those problems that hurt us early in the season. You cannot win football games when you are a slightly above average team, which is where I kind of put our purple, when you turn the ball over 3 times without taking it away, right? They looked like the better team last night, the Vikings did. They seemed to have been in control, but there was just those untimely turnovers that left the door open. And Russell Wilson, Mr. Unlimited, is as poorly as he has played, he still thrives for late minute heroics. And we saw a little bit of the old Russ, and turnovers would kill you. I think that was a self-inflicted loss last night.
I think that was the worst part. You talk about the turnovers. I also think about Kevin O'Connell's play calling. Which, you are a Gopher fan just like me. It reminded me a lot of our guy, PJ Fleck, who, he rows the boat, but these days he's like rowing like he's getting chased by a bear, like looking at what's behind him, like, I might make a mistake. Let's go forward, but very, very cautiously. I also saw a lot of snaps under center when the blitz was getting home. When we do talk about self-inflicted wounds, it just felt like the Vikings were never helping themselves out or helping their own cause because they were a little bit too close to the line of scrimmage. They were allowing Josh Dobbs to get hit a lot. And then you also had a couple of, questionable hits by Sean Payton's defense. Imagine that, right? I mean, that guy's never been questioned for that, but Kareem Jackson gets a 4-game suspension for using himself like a battering ram for the 10th time this season. And the NFL's like, 4 games, whatever, what the hell. Here is what I think is the biggest thing from the Vikings loss. And I'll let you kind of chime in from there. Actually, you know what? Let's keep going this way. I'm a little flustered here because, like I said, I'm kind of operating with eyes in the back of my head. There were a couple plays last night where the Vikings had a chance to make some plays to win the game, but they couldn't quite make them. Josh Metellus' drop in the end zone at the end of the first half is a very big play in my eyes because you lose the game by 1 point. If Metellus holds on, you have they take 3 points off the board. The Vikings go into halftime with a 10-6 lead, and the Broncos are looking for something else at the end of the game. It just felt like the Vikings couldn't come up with that big play that they've come up with so often during this winning streak. And that's why it was a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there was a couple of plays. The Metellus drop at the moment felt like, that would have been nice to have it, right? It would have been a difficult catch, but that was, looking back, a moment that could have changed. And then the Madison fumble, that was the turnover that killed me. The first fumble by Dobbs was, okay, you lined him up as a running back. What do you expect to happen there? That was a little too cute of a play call for my liking on that short. That short was 4th and 1, 3rd and 1. And then, getting your arm hit, like, that's going to happen sometimes. But that Madison fumble, we were where? Probably 35. We were on plus side of the territory. We were up 8. Even a field goal there kind of locks this thing away. That fumble just killed me. Left the door open. So to me, that was the one. And you saw the lack of playmakers a little bit last night. It hasn't really crept up on us with JJ and Osborne being out. And even Cam Akers was providing a little bit of something. Last night was the first time with Surtain kind of shadowing Addison a little bit. He didn't have a big game, and it looked like we were lacking playmakers, especially on offense. And the offensive line kind of did primetime offensive line things, and there was a lot of pressure. And so those were the things that really stood out to me.
You mentioned the Madison fumble, and that is exactly what I decided to make the biggest notification of this, or the biggest topic of this episode, because I think that's where a lot of the angst is with Vikings fans right now. There are a lot of things going well, like even with the loss, not too mad about the Vikings, right? But it's that Madison fumble that was the killer. Like, you're going in for the Mortal Kombat score, you know what I mean? Like fatality, right? Finish him. And like Kirk Cousins on a routinely basis is like the guy who doesn't know like the buttons on Mortal Kombat. He just like hits a whole bunch of buttons and he's like, oh, he just punched him over, whatever. Like, the Vikings have been that team because they consistently play one-score games, because they can't make that big play. And I think what's holding them back right now from me being like, this team can make a run, this team is true contenders, they can do everything that the top teams can do. Their running back issue is a problem, and they don't have a solution. And I know some of you guys are out there like, oh, but Ty Chandler. Give me a minute here, because I'm going to explain all of this. Anybody who's followed this show throughout, its existence knows how I feel about Alexander Madison. He's a fine backup. If you need a guy in a pinch, that's fine. The Vikings were idiots to make him a starting running back. Like, I'm just going to put it there, because like they basically decided to buy great value cereal in the bag as opposed to like, Fruit Loops in a box, right? Like the Fruit Loops in a box, there's not like a big difference, but it makes the difference. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, Alexander, he ran well last night. Like, if you look at his stats, 18 carries, 81 yards, he still looking for his first rushing touchdown, but he's not a starting running back. This was only his second fumble of the year, but he had 2 reversed during the Chargers games that were fumbles that were actually taken away. He's had several drops in the passing game, and he just doesn't have that burst to take advantage of defenses. You know who he reminds me of, Nick? Leroy Horde. You remember Leroy Horde?
I loved Leroy Horde as a kid, but not as like the guy, right? Leroy was the greatest backup running back, I think, in Vikings history.
Yeah. And he had one of the greatest quotes in Vikings history where he said, if you want 1 yard, I'll get you 3. If you want 5 yards, I'll get you 3. And he was better than that. But I mean, that's how I feel about Alexander Madison. Like, he doesn't have that burst. So like, if you need 1 yard, he can probably get it for you. If you need 5 yards, I don't know. You need some things to go right. And he had some big chunk runs, but that was it. So everybody's looking at this now after that turnover and going like, okay, Ty Chandler's got to be the starter because he's more productive. He's faster. He's got that burst. But I think there's a problem here. I really do. Because if the Vikings like Ty Chandler in this running back, starting running back role, they would have done it already. And they have put everything in front of him as to like keep him from being the starting running back. Like it honestly reminds me of Mike Zimmer a couple years ago when they had that 2021 rookie class. And everybody's like, all right, Kirk's out. Time to see what Kellen Mond can do. And Zimmer's like, no, we're starting Sean Mannion. Everybody's like, what are you doing? Like, even they lost that last game and they had this meaningless season finale against the Chicago Bears at home. And Courtney Cronin asked Mike Zimmer, she's like, hey, do you want to see what Kellen Mond can do or something along those lines? And he said, not particularly because I see him every day. And everybody's like, whoa, what's going on? Zimmer really hates these rookies. Well, the truth is Kellen Mond sucked and they didn't want him to get on a football field. Like I'm sensing the same thing with Ty Chandler, even though he is producing right now. There is something that the Vikings don't want us to know about Ty Chandler. They don't want to overexpose him and have that hurt us. And I think of the blitz pickup that led to the Dobbs fumble, actually that was an interception, but Chandler whiffs on that blitz pickup, Dobbs turns it over, and that's another play that kind of turned the game on its head. Kevin O'Connell mentioned before or after a preseason game in Seattle, he looked really good, but I need to see it every day from him. There's no consistency there. He mentioned something going on in practice. And you see what the Vikings have done. They brought back Alexander Mattison instead of just going Ty Chandler RB1 season. They kicked the tires on David Montgomery in free agent. That was a report that was out there. They drafted Dwayne McBride and ran around and said they had a starter grade on him and everything else. It's really, it's really confusing. They traded for Cam Akers. They could have just given Ty Chandler the load right there. And they said, hey, we need another running back. There is something going on the Vikings don't want us to know with Ty Chandler. And because of that, I think there's nobody they can completely trust. And this is a big issue in the Vikings backfield.
Oh, it's huge. And I do want to bring back to one thing. You said Madison can get you 1 yard, definitely not down by the goal line. I've never seen a team who can't gain 1 yard when they truly need it.
And it's not like the offensive line's bad.
No, they've been playing
line's
well
been
this
kicking
year.
ass, and he still can't do it.
I know. So, yeah, the Ty Chandler thing is weird because you see the flash plays and you see things that you're like, ooh, that looks different than what the other backs that you have on your staff. So I get the appeal of him, but you're right. KOC's a smart guy, especially offensively. He's given young guys an opportunity. I mean, Brandon Powell's been like this awesome kind of, cheap addition to our team that's been playing really well. So it's not like he won't play young guys or he's stubborn in his ways. So there is something we don't know. Something he doesn't do well or that makes KOC really, really nervous to put him out on a consistent basis. And I don't know if we'll ever know that, but it is a significant issue. And I think it is a huge thing that we are going to have to figure out this offseason. It's priority maybe one really on this team behind, figuring out the quarterback position. That's kind of its own pedestal. But running back, luckily running back you can fix in one season. But I don't think the answer is on the team right now.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be against them using. I know, like all the analytics nerds, their heads would explode if they took Travion Henderson early in next year's draft. But I mean, I wouldn't be against it. It's like load up that offense. Let's go get a guy early in the draft. I'm not saying take him in the first round, but I mean, day 1, day 2 pick, you might as well fly out. I mean, there is I can't remember who it was from PFF, but he was losing his damn mind because he's screaming at the Jets, you took Breece Hall when you could have had Malik Willis. Well, most of the guys are taken in that second round. The running back has a better chance of hitting in that second round than any other player because they should be a first round player. But, PFF's well, running backs don't matter. And, you could just get one at the community college and he could run for 1,000 yards easy if you have the right scheme. Well, that shit ain't happening for the Vikings right now. What do they do? What do they do for the rest of the season, Nick? Do you think do you give Ty Chandler more carries and just go YOLO ball, or do we keep doing this Madison thing? Because I think something needs to change, but I don't know what they do at this point.
Yeah, I think they're kind of stuck. I mean, I don't think there's any sort of free agent running back that isn't anywhere. Sometimes you see the teams snag someone off a practice squad and turn them into something. But I think I think you got to kind of ride what you have, maybe give Ty a little bit more, maybe keep going to Madison just to be able to prove to yourself that he's not, right? Like sometimes I don't want to end the season with this feeling of like, well, maybe he is. So maybe we give him 1 year, right? Like, and so the advantage to continuing to play Madison a little bit is that you're going to know, right? I think you're going to know. I think we already do know, but then you can say without a shadow of a doubt, hey, thanks. We gave you your opportunity. You can either take a significant pay cut and be our backup, which seems to suit your skills, or we're cutting you and we're moving on. And I think everyone can feel good about that decision.
Well, we got a 7-7 game on Monday Night Football, and I think ESPN has probably showed Taylor Swift more than the points that are scored in the first half. But that is enough as I kind of again keep my eyes in the back of the head. So if we have to log off very quickly, that is what happened to us. We've been attacked by Swifties and Chiefs fans who want their channel back. Let's ask you this: how does this loss make you feel? Because looking at the stretch, there are a lot of Viking fans who are sitting there going like, yeah, dude, we're going to start running the table. We're going to get all these wins. We're going to start getting all this momentum. They looked at the quarterback schedule and everything else. And I kind of looked at it and I said, they're going to slip up somewhere. And I think it's either going to be in Denver, Las Vegas, or it's going to be both. So like when this loss happened, I wasn't upset. I was like, okay, whatever. Denver's a tough place to play. They're starting to figure it out defensively. I didn't really feel too bad about the actual loss. How about you?
Yeah, I was in the same boat. Like it was one that was there and would have been nice to have. Well, what this did for me is kind of solidify that we're not catching Detroit, minus a gigantic kind of fade from them, which it's Detroit. Like that is always in the possibility, but this kind of cements where I feel this team is, which is a low level, low seeded playoff team. The schedule is still there for them to be a low level. The teams chasing them are going to slip up. I mean, there's no one chasing us that goes, ooh, they could get hot. Everyone's flawed. And so it puts some pressure on these next 3 weeks. The Green Bay game, you go 4-2, and I feel really good about where your chances are. I even think at 3-3, I feel pretty good about where our chances are. If you steal one with, if I steal one from Detroit, that's great. But I just definitely think that they're right where they were a week ago. And this just kind of cements that they're a wild card team, not a division champ.
When the bar runs out of beer during a Vikings game, that's just
Jeff.
a terrible sign. Thanks for commenting, Jeff. We definitely appreciate it here on this Monday night while everybody's watching the Kelsey Bowl. Here's the thing that bothers me about this game. And it's a bit of my genuine fear with this whole like renaissance, right? This team is fun. I will say it that way. Like there are a lot of things about this team that I like, and it's going to get better when you get Justin Jefferson back in the lineup. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later if we don't get booted. My fear with this is that the Vikings are going to just be good enough to get in the playoffs and just get clown hammered in the first round. And they're going to have 9 or 10 wins. They're going to be in that 20 to 21 range. And you kind of just sit back there and you're like, is it worth it? Was it really worth it? Because that's how I felt at the end of the Giants game last year, where, the Vikings, we were all like hoping on vibes and good luck and all that stuff. And like all of a sudden Daniel Jones came in and kicked our ass. Like, I wonder if you're 20 and 21 in this draft with all those quarterbacks. And I know a lot of people are going to tell me the draft is random, and that's fine. That's absolutely true. But you also have a better chance to get your quarterback of the future when you are picking in that upper half in the draft. And when you're 1-4 and you're kind of sliding the way, even when Kirk Cousins got hurt, they were only 3-4. Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't have traded for Josh Dobbs. You got to keep the culture somehow. Excuse me. But those wins, they can wind up being damaging, especially when you're trying to figure out this quarterback thing. And of course you could trade up, but I am worried that this is like a glass slipper that's just going to have the carriage turn into a pumpkin here in the next couple of weeks. And, I think the Vikings can win. I think they'll wind up being a 10, 11 win team, but I mean, at some point you kind of got to look at the rebuild part of this competitive rebuild and be like, okay, are you just going to hand Kirk Cousins a $40 million check after all this? Because I don't know. Some of the plays Josh Dobbs made last night, Kirk Cousins isn't making. And that's nothing against Kirk. It's just different skill sets. And I think that mobility is what you want in a modern day quarterback. And that's exactly why we're kind of looking at it this way.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to fall where the Vikings, I mean, what has been, I think, the biggest hurdle for this franchise is that we're actually like too good for our own good sometimes, right? Like we never seem to truly bottom out. We always have enough talent to finish in this range, which is why we are perpetually in this range. I look at the rest of the season and I like the schedule for this reason. You're going to kind of know about Dobbs. After week one, I had friends texting me like, he's the future sign. And I'm like, hold on, just like one moment. Like, I love him and I'm completely open. I'm having fun with him. I'm open to him being this stopgap type of guy. But let's there's some good and some bad. I think you really get a chance to see what does a mobile quarterback truly look like in this system? What does Josh Dobbs look like in this system? And then you get to compare it to what you've seen out of Kirk Cousins. You got a lot of tape and you know what you're getting from Kirk Cousins. And so I'm thinking to myself, like, where's my positivity? I think you're going to have a lot of really good information going into an offseason where you don't really know what the route is, right? So to me, you have Cousins sitting there. Sounds like he wants to be back. The Achilles might bring his price tag down a little bit. You're going to be solid. You know what he can do. If Dobbs lights the world on fire and leads us to the playoffs and we look and we compete in the playoffs, boom, you might have an option there. Or, if you got to do what some teams do sometimes and you have to pay to move up, right? Like that is always an option too, is that you invest. It's going to cost more. Every win you have, that moving up is going to cost you more. But that's an option, right? And so I like the idea of we have information and we have plenty of games to sample that information to hopefully make a really smart decision moving forward.
The team is house money right now. Mm-hmm. I would say, if they lose, I mean, you're in that middle class, and maybe you can, give up a couple extra draft picks to move up for Bo Nix or something. I mean, there's probably going to be everybody's talking like guys falling in the second round or whatever. There will be 4 quarterbacks taken in the top 10. Mm-hmm. That's just how the thing works. They'll get to the combine, they'll talk to them, they'll fall in love, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, there's 5 quarterbacks in the first 5 picks. Oh, I guess we're taking edge rusher or something. Mm-hmm. The Kirk thing is really interesting because now he's doing the media tour where he's like, I would love to be a Minnesota Viking the rest of my career. And I commented on X like a smart ass. I said, for the low hometown discount of $40 million a year, I will gladly take the Daniel Jones deal. And here's the other thing too. Josh Dobbs is represented by the same agent, Mike McCartney, who is a shark and has gotten every penny he can out of the Minnesota Vikings. I'm not saying I don't want Kirk back under any circumstances, but I mean, if it gets to that point, I think you just have to move on and be like, all right, man, this has been fun. We love you and everything, but we have other things that we need to do here. We need to sign Christian Darrisaw. We need to sign Justin Jefferson. There's a lot of money that needs to be distributed, and we don't have the infrastructure to pay $40 million. I mean, Danielle Hunter, dude, give him a contract. Go up to him and be like, all right, what do you want? We're sorry we screwed with you for 5 years. The first 3 weren't us. We swear to God. It was that Spielman guy. Just what do you want? That's a guy you should hand a blank check to, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting, this season's fun and I'm going to enjoy it because we're in it and the team's likable. But man, I think the real popcorn, the real movie, the real intensity comes this offseason because this is the biggest decision in this administration's career. And then you're adding in, well, what does Justin want? And for me, I'm like, okay, this feels like the moment that either gets them a job for a long time or gets this administration canned in 3 to 4 years. So that's, to me, I don't have any dreams that we are a Super Bowl contender now. I think we're a playoff team. I think we could potentially steal one, though. This feels a lot like a rematch with a ticked off Niners team that just waxes us, out in San Fran. That's what this feels like to me. But this offseason, man, it's going to be fascinating to see what direction they want to go.
Kyle Shanahan's revenge, not only for that loss, just what you did to my Kirky. My Kirky shredded his Achilles. How dare you? We got some time here, and I'm looking here. You want to run through the schedule quick and see if we get booted here?
Yeah, whatever you want to do, man. You're the pro. I'll just leave whenever you need me to hit leave.
I am Josh Dobbsing this thing. I'm running around. I'm making plays. I'm chucking it down the field. I don't know. I'll use my legs. I don't care. Like we'll just do it this way. Let's just start going quickly game by game, and we'll see if we get booted. And if we don't, we can end this thing properly. Otherwise, we'll just like scram as soon as the Chiefs fans show up. Chicago at home next Monday. Justin Jefferson, I know Kevin O'Connell spoke very cautiously today about Justin Jefferson's status, said he will be questionable. I would just wait one more week with that thing, man. Like I want him healthy for those Detroit games, and I want him healthy for the playoffs. So like, if you want to buy an extra week with that window, I'm all for it because you can beat Chicago without Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, exactly. If he's even close, hamstrings are tricky. That's his, his burst, his separation is his thing. If it's not ready, you can beat Chicago. So, and I think they do either way. I think with Justin, without Justin at home, I think they beat Chicago.
So we got a win against the Bears. How about going to Vegas the following, actually 2 weeks after that, because they'll have the bye to rest up, and then they'll go to Vegas. They going to have a hangover from the bye week, or are they going to have a hangover from partying after they beat Vegas?
Yeah, I don't know. Like Vegas is one of those teams you just never know what you're really going to get. To me, this is the outside of the Detroit games of the four, like, hey, a 4-2 win, like this is the one that probably scares me the most. I think this is the hardest win to go and get. But I still think it's a coin flip game. I think you go into that one, off the bye. I like it. Get healthy. Maybe JJ's back. And so, I could easily see them pulling that one out too.
Antonio Pierce is definitely a character as a head coach. I will say I didn't like him when he played, but the vibes are great with Vegas right now. So I don't know. It's one of those teams I could see them, kind of failing off down the stretch, or I could see them really galvanizing and picking up some big wins, even though they lost to Miami yesterday. They go to Cincinnati, which is a much easier matchup now that Joe Burrow shredded his wrist. Jake Browning, he's smart. He's vaccinated. That's not a political comment. I'm just quoting Mike Zimmer. I don't think he's a good quarterback, though. I think that is for the Vikings, unless they do something really stupid in the jungle.
I mean, there's always something with backup quarterbacks in this team, but I do think that that's the most winnable game remaining. So yes, I agree.
Yeah, there's really not much to say. Poor Bengals. I do feel bad for them because, like,
agreed.
That's just a lost season for them. Especially, I think it's the last season of Joe Burrow's rookie contract window too. So, like, not as bad as Justin Herbert's rookie contract window, which that's like one of the worst. That's like one of the biggest whiffs in recent NFL history. Like, we have Justin Herbert. We can't win games. We Charger every week. Game 1 against Detroit, Christmas Eve. Is Dan Campbell going to shit in our stocking, or what do you think happens here?
I'm feeling that we get swept by Detroit. They've played us well always, and now they're the better team. Christmas Eve, those big games we always seem to lay an egg. I don't like either Detroit. I'm counting them both as losses now. This is the one that would be a happy, it's like the Niners game. Like, if we win it, it's sweet, right? But if I'm being realistic, this is those are our two losses that I think are pretty much set in stone.
I want Dan Campbell at my holiday party, though. Do you man, like him just dressing up as Santa Claus, just like chugging like 15 Bud Lights or whatever his 15 Guinnesses, according to the comments in our show today. Just Yeah, I love me some Dan Campbell. The one thing about him is like when he plays, when the Vikings play Detroit, like Dan Campbell seems to have their number. I don't know what it is, but they're always winning. They're always doing one thing or the other. He always seems to have an upper hand, and then he screws up in Minnesota. In Detroit, he just kicks the shit out of the Vikings. Like, I think the first one was that walk-off touchdown by Amon-Ra St. Brown that really like springboarded his career. So like that was one thing. And then last year, it was just like an absolute, like Jameson Williams, the only catch of his rookie year is a touchdown against the Vikings after they trade down. That is peak Minnesota sports. There is nothing like it. That being said, I will take the Vikings at home on Christmas Eve. And I will say this. So they end a 5-game winning streak and they start a 4-game winning streak right away. How about going? No, they will be right here. New Year's Eve, US Bank Stadium against the Green Bay Packers.
That's a win for me. Like, you got the hard one out of the way. Jordan Love is not like, I want him to be the franchise. All my Packer friends, I say, there's your franchise, because I want them to hang on to him for a long time, because Jordan Love means wins for my team. And so I think that's a win. I think the Packers are not anything, and I think we sweep them, which will be a fun kind of notch to have in our belt.
You know, I was talking about this, and somebody was saying to me on Sunday as they were losing to the Chargers, they go, you know, that I just want them to lose, like, damn Chargers or whatever. And like, no, this is great. This is great. Get those 7 to 8 to 9 wins. Get that middle draft pick, because like, I don't want the Packers to just flatline and go 3-13, especially this year, because they could get Caleb Williams. I want the Packers to rot in the same hell the Vikings have been in for 60 years. Just good enough to like make the playoffs, but not good enough. Go pay Jordan Love $45 million, because that's what he'll ask for, because he'll be like, my stats are better than Daniel Jones. And then, you know, watch us profit and watch the NFC North flip upside down on its head. Season finale at Detroit. We talked enough about Dan Campbell. I think that one's a loss. I just don't like, Detroit's a vibe right now, and they got some good things going. I think that one's a loss.
I agree. And it could be that weird, like back-to-back, right? We could lose that game and then go there the very next week for the playoffs, which could be weird to play them 3 out of 4 weeks to end the season. But I agree. I think that is a big L. I think that is the hardest game remaining on the schedule.
That could be the matchup, especially if they beat Dallas, because I think they get Dallas next month. The Dallas Cowboys, who just pound bad teams, are always like, who gonna stop them? Well,
any good team. Yeah.
The Cardinals, the Arizona Cardinals are going to stop them, and Josh Dobbs, because they already did earlier this year. Like, just looking at this, so you had the Vikings dropping a pair of games to Detroit. I had the Vikings dropping 1 game to Detroit. So like in that scenario, so that's 5-1, trying to do math on the fly here. So that's an 11 or 12 win team in Kevin O'Connell's second season.
Yeah, you got that Kool-Aid going over there, big guy. 5-1. I think that's a little rose-colored glasses.
Yeah. That is not me. I am not Mr. Purple Kool-Aid, even though I had it as my Twitter avatar for years. Like, I am always cynical, but I mean, I look at the schedule, I look at some of the good things that are happening, and I realize that you have Justin Jefferson back. And like I said, even if he doesn't play on Monday night, extra week, roll him out in Vegas, and you have him for that final stretch. I want to see Josh Dobbs with Justin Jefferson. I want to see Jordan Addison with Justin Jefferson out there again. And I want to see, you know, I mean, there are going to be a lot of weapons, except in the Vikings backfield. Can Ty Chandler fix whatever is wrong with him? Because I don't give a shit about the stats. Like, everybody's like, well, his stats, he ran for 70 yards. And did you see him? He was awesome. Yeah. They are seeing something else. They are hiding something about Ty Chandler. So if they can mask whatever that is, and if they can get the best out of him, they'll be fine. If they can't, I don't think they're going anywhere with Alexander Mattison in the backfield.
No, I think they're the better team in 4 of their 6 remaining games. So it's going to come down to, can they take care of the ball? That's been their thing all season. right? Their analytics are really good outside of that stat. And so like you're the better team in 4 games. And if you don't turn the ball over, you got a very good shot to defeat Detroit and beat Detroit one of those 2 games. If you but that's what has changed, right? That's why we
Yeah.
lost last night. It felt like the first 3 weeks of like, man, we're playing pretty good, but we can't get out of our own way. So to me, that is the only thing that will hold this team back from a 4-2 record is if they turn the ball over, which they've been known to do.
So it is half the Chiefs game. They're up 17 for a field goal right at the end. Must be Taylor Swift powers or something like that. Wouldn't it be something if it was just 22-13? Just the final score.
oh man. I mean, my wife woke up and was like, the parents are meeting tonight. They're both going to be there at the game, both Taylor and Travis. So
will there
she
be
was
cameras?
interested.
Will there be cameras? Will there be an
Just a few.
ESPN camera? They'll have an all 22. They'll YouTube TV will have the multi-view channel where you just have like 4 different angles at once and whatever. While the entire world is oogling and googling over Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce. Feel like he gets lost in the shuffle a little bit.
Yeah.
I like Jason. Jason's pretty funny, and I think he's going to be an awesome commentator whenever he decides to hang it up. But while everybody's over there, we're in the toy section watching wrestling, and I was texting you as I was watching this, Nick, on Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
Swerve Strickland against Hangman Adam Page was some of the craziest shit I've ever watched. It was a Texas death match, which for those of you who don't speak wrestling, there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of weapons, and the object is not to actually kill your opponent. That would probably be highly illegal. But the goal is to knock your opponent down for 10 seconds. And at one point, Hangman was drinking Swerve's blood and spitting into the crowd. There was another moment where he was stapling his child's face painting or finger painting to his face. It was very violent, but I thoroughly enjoyed it and was happy I forked out the money for that match in particular.
Yeah, so I got a 7-year-old daughter who's like fallen in love with wrestling, right? Like when most dads' daughters were asking to go to the Taylor Swift concert this summer, mine was begging to go to Raw, which was fantastic, our first Raw. And that match like cemented why she always asked, Dad, why don't we watch AEW together? And I just want to say that match right there, the staples, the blood drinking, that is why Dad loves AEW. But 7-year-old, we can't turn that on because
you're not ready for this.
Like, man, it's like moving up, to the PG-13 R-rated movie someday, kid. Someday. But I've never seen anything like that. And I remember some of I was never a huge ECW guy, but I remember The Rock Mankind. Like the drinking of the blood was like the moment I was like, oh, like I'm gagging here just thinking about it. But you know what? They made a moment. They created a memory. I will talk about this match for a long, long time. And that's what they set out to do. So, bravo to them. To me, AEW has been a little bit inconsistent lately, but I thought that this show this weekend was fairly solid. It piqued my interest in a lot of ways. And I love when there's 2 good wrestling companies that make each other better.
Yeah, and speaking of which, the other company, they're starting to cook right now because I apologize. I'm actually gonna step away from the microphone to do this because I don't want to blow out your eardrums. But War Games, or I can't do it like William Regal. But the War Games match is coming this weekend right now on Monday Night Raw as we speak. Every nerd like you and I are waiting the return of this man in the corner here, Mr. Randy Orton. There are also some good long-term storylines, which at this point, you're kind of looking at where they could go for WrestleMania in the spring. Santos Escobar, that heel turn in that promo on Rey Mysterio, that guy is cooking right now.
Hey, Dominic was right. I
hope they amputate your leg. And then you also have Bailey, who is the leader of Damage Control. She's going to die, not literally again, that would be illegal, but everybody else in Damage Control is just going to jump and beat the hell out of her, and she's going to become a face again, which I am very excited for. The Usos are eventually going to fight down the road. Cody's going to try and finish the story, and Logan Paul as US champ. I love it. I actually do, especially when he's sitting there talking with his buddy in the Triple H voice, like, hey, don't screw in the belt, okay? Like, we got a problem with that. Like, there are some really good things going on right now.
Yeah, and like Survivor Series has always been kind of that fun one, right? Like it doesn't really have typically lasting impacts, but it's where the seeds for the real season begin, right? Like it's November, right around the corner is the Rumble, and then it really starts to cook. And I think you're right. Like they have really invested in long-term storytelling, which has been something I have been screaming about through years and years and years. Like, make me care, make things that matter, not just in a moment to get a big pop, but to have a legitimate payoff at the end. And if they do this right, WrestleMania could feel really, really climactic and really, really feel like the show that finalizes so much of what they do. And then if they back that up with like, okay, now we're starting fresh with something new, like you get this double awesomeness of all of these storylines finishing, which is what WrestleMania to me feels like. It's the end of stories. And I hate when they do the WrestleMania match and then they do the exact same title match the next pay-per-view. It's one of my biggest pet peeves in all of WWE. I hate the rematch clause after WrestleMania. Like, stop. No, WrestleMania should be the closing chapter unless you're going to make it go all the way to the next WrestleMania. But it feels like they really have with Damage. I mean, and it's the mid card that they're going to do so well with, right? Like you can sell big matches, right? You can always sell big matches, but to get me to care about the third through the seventh match each night, I'm going to this year. I'm excited to see Damage Control. I'm excited to see the Usos fight Escobar and Dominic and Judgment Day and the women, like there's so much good going on. That Mania is going to be real fun, and everything leading up to it. The Rumble is going to be a blast. Mania is going to be a blast, and it's good. Wrestling is good right now.
I hope the Rumble is a blast because I spent an embarrassing amount to go.
We've all been there
to the Royal Rumble. It'll be fun. If you follow me on social, I will probably be tweeting and showing a lot of things whenever I have service. It's going to be a great time, and like I said, the one thing that I like right now is like I'm invested. I care about a lot of the storylines that are going on. Like when Cody lost to Roman Reigns at WrestleMania last year, I was legitimately angry. Your daughter is actually a Cody Rhodes super fan. She was probably, how did she take that loss? Because like I was like seething. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me?
And she's still in that realm of like belief. Yes. And so there was tears. That was her first tears with wrestling. And she has still not forgiven Solo for interfering in that match. She literally, like, it's almost like she spits on the ground every time she comes out. He is dead to her for the rest of time. She cannot wait for Solo. She was mad that John Cena couldn't do it. And she's just like, Dad, is anyone ever going to be able to beat Solo? Like, she's legitimately kind of scared of him, but hates him. And so when this pays off, she's going to be the happiest 7-year-old under the sun if Cody can finish the story at some point. The amount of times on our Google machine we play Cody Rhodes' theme song in a week is crazy.
It will be my number one song on Spotify again this year. It was like, if not that, it'll be Randy Orton's new theme for voices, because that thing, I can't wait to hear it tonight. If it's not Randy Orton, I'm gonna be like, what in literal hell?
Everything is a disappointment if it's not him.
It's CM Punk.
I'm out on Punk. I'm out on Punk. No, thank you.
Okay. Speaking of cooking, we just burned the shit out of everything. But this is a Minnesota Vikings podcast. When Nick is on, we got to talk a little bit about wrestling. A 2-to-1 ratio. We talked Vikings for 30 minutes while we thought we were going to get kicked off the air. we stayed. So some people are probably like, I wish those damn Chiefs fans showed up, man.
Yeah.
Like they just talked about, right? Like they were talking about a guy drinking blood and like it's deeply, like what is going on here? But for Vikings talk, we do this every Monday and Thursday, sometimes later in the week, but we'll let you know ahead of time right here on the Viking Age YouTube channel. We're on Apple and Spotify the very next day, but however you consume us, don't forget to rate, comment, share, and subscribe so you never miss a new episode and we can spread the word to the masses. For my friend Nick Marty, I am Chris Schad, and this has been the Viking Age Podcast.